conquer and we're going to take some. Is that understood? Yes, sir. That's what we're going to do, sweetheart. We are going to go and get some. All right, people, on the ready line. Are you me? Yeah! Are you me? Yeah! What are you? What are you?
Autism Acceptance Month is a good time to recognize the talents, contributions, and diversity within the autism community. Sign up and read informative articles for free about autism and other disabilities at www.epmagazine.com.
Monotony. It comes in all shapes and sizes. Dull, tedious, just plain boring. But what is this? A contender, perhaps? Something unboring by the looks of it. Jabs right at dull, an uppercut to tedium, something that keeps you on your toes, keeps your head on a swivel, a knockout punch to your old, boring workouts. Welcome to Fight Camp.
Oscar Mike Radio is a proud podcast partner of Reach Across America Radio, heard every Thursday at 11 a.m. and Sunday at 8 a.m. Eastern. They're also big supporters of the nonprofit I Got Your Six, Two Lives at Once. And with every wreath you sponsor through Oscar Mike Radio, $5 goes back to this great organization dedicated to making a difference in the lives of veterans, law enforcement, firefighters, and first responders battling PTSD. Two Lives at Once pairs these brave men and women together with dogs rescued from kill shelters. In this way, two lives are saved at the same time by saving each other. Donate now. Go to reachacrossamerica.org/Oscar Mike Radio to help. That's reachacrossamerica.org/Oscar Mike Radio.
I remember a time when I was in a not so good place, and these games and these activities and being able to come and have the camaraderie that we have here, it makes me feel like I'm not alone. There are people here that have been through what I've been through. It makes me feel like I don't know, I'm part of something great.
Just let yourself go. Give it a try.
How's it going?
Going well. It's that new guy energy.
Oh, he's back. That's the fourth time he's done that.
Is he peeking or probing?
Speaking with serious intent to probe.
Alpha 2, we might have guys starting to move on our position.
Copy, we're getting a buildup of activity here too.
Yeah, I definitely see weapons at this point.
Yeah, we have definite massing.
profane. We're seeing activity converging to your north and south.
This is Frogman 6 Romeo. We need evac at our last known position. We have severely wounded. Who's the severely wounded? It's not you. Is it me? Who is it? No, it's not you. No, it's it.
Copy 1, we're in contact 2.
You coming to you or you coming to us?
Stand by. We'll let you know when we're inbound.
Let's move!
Here's the plan. EA 5 minutes, over.
The scouts are gonna lead us out, and I'm bringing up the rear. Pop smoke.
Smoke out?
We are all coming back.
OP1, they are en route to you.
3 minutes out! 3 minutes! Eyes on me and only me.
Has anyone looked at you? Claymore rocked me, dude.
2 minutes out! 2 minutes!
Where are you guys?
Look for the blood and the smoke!
Multiple bad guys trying to get to our position.
Inbound! Inbound! Find cover!
1 minute out!
We have enemy on our building and all surrounding buildings.
Roger that, stand by. Going hot.
You gotta get ready, man. This is gonna hurt.
On my count. 1, 2, 3.
Hello and welcome again to Oscar Mike Radio. My name is Travis, Marine Corps veteran and your host. Oscar Mike Radio is co-produced with Sinister One Productions. What's your podcast doing? I want to thank my sponsor, Joyce Asek of Asek Real Estate, and my supporters, Cason Shaving Company, Exceptional Parent Magazine, and Fight Camp. Be your strongest combination. Hey, this year is going fast. It's going furious. I love it. I love it. And I'm always excited to talk to veterans and service members from other countries. And my next guest will be my third veteran from the UK military. God save the king. I want to welcome just a genuine, I must say this, badass, Mark Ormrod. Welcome to Oscar Mike Radio.
Thank you for having me. Who are the other two guys?
So one of them, it works for Immersive Labs. He helped start Immersive Labs. He's in cybersecurity. Okay. And the other one is Philippa Bagley, who does like NLP and she's just a really cool individual. And we got to talking because I'm not really a soccer fan, but I watched the Sunderland documentary, Sunderland Till We Die, about the soccer team, and we bonded over that. So you're number 3. It's very, very cool. And you're a Royal Marine. And we always think that, we kind of have a little bit of your DNA in us, as much as we're loath to admit that, but it's the truth.
Yeah, we are two sides of the same coin.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So talk about that. You're growing up in the UK. You have your life in front of you. What made you say, you know what, I want to join the military, but not just join, the regular British Army, no disrespect or anything, but I want to go to the Royal Marines because, there's a lot of respect there. It's not easy. I've watched some of the documentaries. I've read a lot of books, like the selection and, just the marching process. And the legacy you all have back to the Falklands and other things, it's a big title to carry.
Right. So I grew up and still live in a small little city called Plymouth in the southwest of England. It is a military-heavy city. We have Royal Marines, Army, huge naval base. And when I was growing up, all of my friends that I grew up with were older than I was. So as I was coming to the end of my compulsory education, they had already left and gone on to university or started their careers. Now, I grew up in the 80s. I was born in 1983. So hopefully you'll remember what a VHS cassette is.
I do.
Okay, it doesn't make me feel too old then. And I was very much into movies. Action movies, Arnie, Stallone, Jean-Claude, all these guys.
Yes.
And I think it was really a combination of a few things. So I was bullied at school for being overweight. This is the mid to late 90s, so before the internet came around. I had to teach myself fitness. I used to save up my money for my lunch, and at the end of the month go and buy a bodybuilding magazine and try and decipher all the big words and learn what the muscle groups were and what cardio was and strength training and all that stuff. Watched these movies until those VHS cassettes snapped, and then watched my friends who were older than me leave school and go off into their careers. And I had a friend that joined the army, a friend that joined the Navy. I'm ashamed to admit I had a friend that joined the Air Force. I'm joking, no disrespect. But I didn't even know who the Royal Marines were, which is bizarre because the Royal Marines headquarters are here in Plymouth and they're less than a mile away from where I grew up. But I think because I watched those movies growing up, I just thought that if you wanted to be a soldier, you joined the army, right? And I had friends in the army, and they used to come home as I was getting towards the end of school, and they would tell me all their cool stories about, the stuff that they had done. Some of them were based overseas, some of them were in the UK. They told me about all these, cool fitness tests they do, 8-9 mile runs and load carries. They got to fire guns and play with tanks. They always seemed to have money for some reason. They all had new cars and they all went out partying all the time. And so I was kind of like looking at where my life was. I had about 6 months before I was due to finish my compulsory education. I looked at them. I looked at what interested me and what I felt like I was good at. And so I decided that a career in the military was what I wanted. Now, because I didn't know who the Royal Marines were, my friend in the army, he was based in Germany in the tank regiment. When he was on leave, he took me to the Armed Forces Careers Office. I spoke to the army recruiter. I was 15 and a half. I got the paperwork, which my parents had to sign because of my age. And when I took it home to get it signed, my dad said I had an uncle who was a retired Royal Marine. And he wasn't my uncle. I think, if I get this right, he was my nan's sister's husband, but we just grew up calling him uncle. And he didn't live that far from me, like 25 minutes away. So we jumped in the car on a Saturday morning, drove up to his house, and I went and spoke to him. And he had joined the Royal Marines as a Marine. He had gone up through the ranks and left as a captain. And he sat me down and he talked to me. He did a full career, which for us is 22 years. And he told me everything he had done, everything he experienced, the kind of things that I could expect to experience if I chose that path and I was successful at walking it, and sent me on my way. So I went back to that same career center the Monday morning, spoke to the Royal Marine recruiter, and instantly it was different. I remember he took out the VHS cassette, the recruiting video. He put it in the TV video combi, and I watched this video of these men that I didn't even know existed. And they looked so much like the men in the movies that I'd watched, the Rambos and the Commandos and all these guys. And they were jumping out of planes. They were attacking beaches and raiding craft. They were yomping up mountains with huge packs on there in the jungle up to their chest in water. They're skiing in the snow. And I'm like, who the hell are these? Anyway, from the minute I saw that video, it was like I had blinkers on and nothing else mattered. I had a couple of weeks left of school. From that moment, had sort of cemented in my mind what it was that I wanted to do. And there was no left and there was no right. It was just straight down the middle. So I filled out the paperwork, took it back to the career center, finished school. I did okay with my exams. So over here, we had back then 10 what we call GCSEs. So when you get to like 16, you take these exams. I got all 10. 9 of them were A to C's. I got a D in geography, so I could have went to college, to university. But like I said, I was locked in on this career to see if I had what it took to be a Royal Marine. And shortly after I finished school, they invited me on what was back then called the Potential Royal Marines course, which is 3 days of just getting trashed. The stuff you expect, right? Up at 5 a.m., push-ups, sit-ups, running everywhere, rope climbs, mud, dirt, people being sick on themselves. And it was their way of weeding out those men who perhaps weren't ready, but it was also a way for those men to look at that very small taste of 3 days and decide, is this the career for me? Fortunately, I didn't get injured. I passed all the criteria tests, so they sent me home. And then they said, just wait. We will send you a letter. We will tell you when you're starting recruit training. Until then, follow this training program, buy this kit and equipment, and just don't get in any trouble. And so that's what I did. I came home, 16 years old, trained to the letter. Everything that piece of paper told me I did. Started accumulating all the kit and equipment that I needed.
And you
And
had
then
to buy your own like stuff for recruit training?
not boots or uniforms, but like sewing kits,
Okay.
washing kits, toothpaste, razors, that kind of stuff. Um, and then the letter came and it said February 2001, we invite you to start recruit training as a member of 804 Troop Royal Marines. And back then, the training was 30 weeks long. It's now, I believe, 36. And I can talk about that later if you like, about why that is. But I also believe recently they announced it's going to go back down to 30 weeks. So yeah, young 17-year-old, start date right in front of me, did everything I could to prepare. I'd learned a little bit more about the Royal Marines at this point because the internet was a thing now in 2001, so I could do my research on their history, current affairs, that kind of thing. Um, but nothing else mattered to me at that point. And I kind of think that's the mindset you need when you're embarking on this kind of journey. You can't be distracted by nonsense, parties and rubbish, which I imagine is very hard nowadays. There's a lot more distractions now than there were. And back in the early 2000s.
For sure.
Yeah, embarked on that training. And um, it is arguably the longest and hardest regular forces training in the world. Like I said, back then it was 30 weeks long. If you made it the first time through, if you didn't get injured, if you factor in Christmas leave, Easter leave, summer leave, things like that, even if you do it in one hit, it's still the best part of a year. And that's for enlisted officers. Their basic training is 18 months of this. It's insane.
Wow.
That's without leave periods. So yeah, that was me, 17 years old, setting out on this journey, February 2001, to see if I had what it took.
And I've watched the videos. We all hump, the Marines hump, the Royal Marines hump. But tell me about that, because one of the things that a couple that I've met when I was in the Marine Corps and outside, they really hang their hat on the training that allowed them to go to the Falklands and do what they did in the Falklands. The conditioning is like we're looking at this like, wow, we thought ours were tough. And it's really like something mental you all develop. Why is that?
You mean the ability just to push on through everything?
Exactly.
Because you don't have a choice.
Yeah.
When you're going through that training. So I have a lot of young men contact me who want to join the military, and they ask me, and I understand why they ask me for fitness advice, which I'm not qualified to give them. I wasn't a physical training instructor or any of that kind of stuff. But what I always tell them is being physically fit is important, right? But in recruit training, it's very progressive. So when you get to the end of it, where it's the hard part, and you've got to do the 30-mile run and all this stuff, you've built up to that. I was never the fittest, the fastest, or the strongest, but I was just a dummy that could keep going. And I didn't mind being wet. I didn't mind being cold. I didn't mind being messed around. I knew it was all a game, and I could find humor in that. And, one of our what we call core values is cheerfulness in the face of adversity. And I was just naturally and luckily able to apply that to most situations. So when they stick this huge pack on your back, and I really should research how much it weighs, because I still don't know, but it is unreal, like the weight that they make you carry, and you hump it for hours and hours and hours and days and days and days over undulating terrain, up mountains, and it's crazy. But you just, for me, I can't speak for everybody, but for me, I was just so locked in on achieving a Green Beret. I had no plan B. Every time I thought about being a civilian, I just felt flat. And I'm like, there's no excitement in that for me. And so it didn't matter really how much weight you put on my back, how far you told me to go, unless I medically just like collapsed or died, then I was just going to do it. Or maybe in the back third of the troop, but I'll do it, and I'll do it on time, and I'll do what they need me to do.
What take me through that time when you actually became a Royal Marine, and it was your training was done, the ceremony happened, and you realized you had accomplished that goal.
So it was really, I was going to say complex. It's really difficult to explain it because, as you can imagine, having gone through all that training, and I was lucky, I didn't get injured, so I made it through in one hit. 64 of us started, 16 of us finished. So you imagine you're going to be elated and you've achieved this thing that thousands of people fail to achieve. But I actually finished my training in October 2001, so right after 9/11. And I was 18 years old. And the mix of emotions was insane because there's part of me, the stupid part, that's a young man that thought I was excited because I was just going to go straight out to war. And then there's the little boy in me, which I didn't show anybody, that was terrified because I had no clue what that meant or what to expect. And then I'm trying to balance that with the emotions of having gone through this arduous journey and achieved this goal, and all at the age of 18. So it was just this massive mix of emotions. 1 minute I'm up, 1 minute I'm down. 1 minute I'm focused on being a Marine, next minute I'm thinking about going to war. So it was crazy. And I think I hid it quite well. Some of the fears. I think a lot of guys did, but we didn't really know what we didn't know because none of us had ever been before. So it was a crazy time. It was, I guess you could call it bittersweet.
Yeah.
And then I was trained very early on, January 2002, to go out to Afghanistan on what was called Operation Jacana. And then for some reason at the last minute, they scaled it down massively, and hundreds of us just got held back in the UK. I think it became more of a special forces reconnaissance kind of trip, and more of the specialized troops, mountain leaders and those kind of people. So I remember feeling a little bit deflated after that because you're riding all these emotions and you're mentally preparing yourself, and then they go, no, it's off. And then you're like, oh, you feel a bit flat. But about a year later, or less than a year later, early 2003, I deployed. I turned 19 at this point. I deployed to Iraq on Operation Telic 1. So I sat off in Kuwait for about a month, and then was part of that initial wave that went over the
right.
Kuwaiti Iraqi border. And I spent 3.5 months there, and I didn't fire a single round, which I thought was bizarre, because in my mind, what it's like when you go through training, the instructors tell you, you're the best, you're the most elite, no one can touch you. You do the things that other people don't want to do, and then you go to a war zone to do those things, and you don't do them. Well, I didn't anyway. So I came back home after 3.5 months, a little bit like, what now? I'm 19. I've got a green beret. I've been to war. It wasn't what I expected. I've kind of ticked these boxes. And so I decided to leave. My eldest daughter, who's just turned 20, was due to be born. I'd done a bunch of other stuff. I'd been out and trained in the Arctic. I'd sailed down to Virginia and been on exercise with you guys. Been as a heavyweight boxer. Then all these other things. I squeezed a lot into 5 years, and then decided to leave to start a new career. I was looking at going into either the fire brigade or the police. Had a relationship breakdown with my daughter's mother, so failed miserably as a civilian. I did retrain as a bodyguard. I went to South Africa for 6 weeks, undertook an intense bodyguard course, but just failed to get work in that industry. Not through lack of work, I think through lack of connections.
Yeah.
I just didn't know anybody to get me that first foot through the door. So after a terrible 12-month period as a civilian, I ended up rejoining the Royal Marines. And because I'd only been a civilian for, I think it was 11 and a half months, I didn't have to go through all that training again. I just had to do the annual tests that we do, so the shooting, the fitness, and that kind of stuff. And 4 weeks after that, I was back in uniform. I don't know why it took 4 weeks. I could have done it all in a day, but they spaced it out over the course of 4 weeks for some reason. But they were paying me, so I wasn't complaining. And when I rejoined, I left Plymouth. I went about an hour and a half north to a place called Somerset, Taunton in Somerset. Joined 40 Commando, who's one of our fighting units, and went straight into pre-deployment training for a tour of Afghanistan again. But this time, it wasn't Op Jacana now, it was Op Herrick. Operation Herrick 7 was what I was due to deploy on, which was going to be 6 months from the 6th of September 2007 until early 2008. But it didn't pan out that way. We had a few issues halfway through the tour, which got me home earlier than expected. And we've worked through those issues now.
Well, I mean, issues were and that's the typical British understatement. I work with some of you in my full-time job, and you all are masters of understatement when you want to be. And so the understatement is you got hit by an IED and lost 3 of your limbs and had to rebuild after that. And I don't, out of respect, I don't want to have to make you go through all that. So not out of disrespect, I want to fast forward through a little bit of that and go to you're trying to convalesce and heal. How much did your Royal Marine experience figure into your mindset to heal? And the reason I asked that is I didn't have the severity of injury you had, but I had a pretty severe injury 3 years ago. And I leaned on a lot of my Marine Corps training to get through some of the more difficult aspects of it. And I'm just curious if you were the same, Mark.
I was. Not initially, though.
Yep, fair enough.
Those first 3 weeks in hospital, after I was injured back in the UK, were pretty brutal. I had the talk from the doctor who explained to me that I had no chance of ever walking again. Because if you're missing a limb above a major joint, it's a lot more challenging than if you're missing it below it. And I had lost both my legs above both my knees and my right arm above my elbow. So that kind of hit me quite hard. And I tell you what kind of flicked the switch for me. So back in 2002, I think it was, after that initial Afghanistan deployment got pulled, I did what a lot of young military men do and went out drinking and partying and getting in a little bit of trouble. And I was called in front of the regimental sergeant major of my unit for being drunk and fighting the previous weekend. And he had a pet peeve that if you had cut the lining out of the inside of your beret to make it shape better, he would steal them off you. He didn't like that. So I was stood in front of him getting what we call charged, so disciplined for the fighting. And he could see the way my beret was on my head that there was no lining in it. So he made me take it off. He pinned it on his notice board and he made me run into the town centre to get a new one and then come back. And I never saw him again after that. Now, when I was in hospital, he had been promoted to what we call the core RSM. So every unit, I don't know if it's the same for you guys, we have a regimental sergeant major, and then you have a regimental sergeant major that's senior to all the other regiments.
Right. We have a sergeant major and then a command sergeant major.
Correct. Okay, perfect.
Yep.
And he came to visit me with the Commandant General of the Royal Marines, so the highest ranking officer in the Marines. So the highest ranking enlisted guy, highest ranking officer. I was lying in a hospital bed. When he came in, he brought me a beret and he said, I remember taking this off you back in 2002. So I sat there and thought, how does this guy, right, this really established guy, highest of rank that you can get, how does he remember a knobhead like me? Like all the way back from 2002 when I was a young Marine. He probably had hundreds of young Marines like getting charged and walking through his office, but he remembered. And that flicked a switch in me because it reminded me what the brotherhood was about. And in that situation, it transcended ranks. You know, he had come down to my level, if you like, to be on equal footing, and gave me that beret that he had took off me all those years before. And so I started thinking about when I said the internet came in just before I had enlisted. I remember when I was looking at all the history of the Royal Marines and the battle honors and all these things. And back when I went through training, the recruiting slogan was Royal Marines Commando, it's a mindset. And so I kind of put all these things together. And I remember laying in hospital, and I only did 6 weeks in hospital before I went to rehab. And I remember laying in there, it was probably about 4 weeks into my recovery now, and thinking, although I'm not a Royal Marine physically anymore, and I can be mentally. And, you know, I mean, and I'd never worked in a tri-service environment before because the Royal Marines are 100% male. And occasionally you'd work with the army and the navy, perhaps. But I personally had never really been in that environment. But when I went to rehabilitation, I was in a tri-service environment. So I remember thinking, right, when I get there, I'm going to show the rest of these guys and girls what that means, what that mindset is. You know, and I was also the first triple amputee in the UK. So no one knew what to do with me. You know, everyone thought I was just going to spiral and go off the deep end because there was no plan and there was no trodden path. They didn't know what to do. But in my mind, after those experiences, I thought, okay, cool, let's show everyone what this mindset is about. So, like you, I leaned into that, and it was the key, if you like, to overcoming all these difficulties and all these challenges, and just taking back control of my life.
And we could talk about, I saw that you wear prosthetics, and I've talked to other service members, U.S., who have talked about how they started off with prosthetics back in the early 2000s, and now they've all changed. But that's not really the meat here. The meat here is, what was it like watching your fellow service members see the Royal Marine mindset right there in front of them? Like, this guy lost 3 limbs. This guy is a young man, but you know what? There's no quit. There's all fight. I'm having a bad day, but look at him go through that. What did that do to them, and what did it do to you, Mark?
I felt like I kind of thrived in that area. I never felt like I had anything to prove, like from a place of anger, but I felt like I wanted to. Like I said, I wanted to show everybody that this mindset could be applied to military training, to rehabilitation, to business, to parenthood, whatever it was. And it's quite funny. I don't know what it's like for you guys over there, but people uh, in other branches of the military will make fun of Royal Marines, and they say, they eat crayons, and
Yes.
Marines stands for muscles are required, intelligence not essential.
Yeah.
But the ironic thing is that we're the complete opposite, because you have to have a certain level of education. We are constantly told we're the thinking man soldier, and we have to improvise, adapt, and overcome, and lead the way, and be the first to adapt, the first to overcome. So when I was in rehab, because I was the first triple amputee, I knew from other experiences in life that the quickest way to get to where I wanted to be was to find somebody who had trodden the path before me. So I actually found a guy, well, he's from California, but we were going to meet in Oklahoma, and his name was Cameron Clapp, and Cameron had been hit by a train in 2002 while coming back from a 9/11 memorial garden. He was a civilian, and he was doing, from the videos I saw online, some phenomenal things with injuries very similar to mine. And everyone was telling me that the things that he was doing were impossible because he's above the knee, he's above the eye. And I'm showing him these videos. I'm like, listen, I'm showing you the videos. Here they are. Like, look. And they were like, no, they're not real. They're marketing videos. It's all fake. Anyway, I reached out to Cameron. I reached out to the team in Oklahoma. We went back and forth for a while, sending emails, and they invited me out. And they said, look, come meet this guy, come train with this guy, and we'll see if we can overcome these issues that you're having, because respectfully, your team in the UK have no experience, but we do. So I asked permission up the chain of command. Can I go out and meet this guy? Told him all about it, said how great it would be, not just for me, but there were probably 10 triple amputees at this point now. So the numbers were increasing. They could all have been helped. and they said no. So I yeah, I went AWOL, and I went anyway. And I was like, listen, I had a lot of conversations with my wife actually at like 2, 3 in the morning when I was like stressed and couldn't sleep. And she said, in 10 years' time, these people won't be in your life. And although you want to play the game and listen to the chain of command and do what you're supposed to do, no one will be around in 10 years. So if you don't do it now, you're probably going to miss out and regret it. So on the 9th of June 2009, I just got in my car. I drove to London, hopped on a plane, flew to Oklahoma, met Cameron, met his team, spent 3 weeks with them. And it was a brutal 3 weeks. Like the pain, physical pain in my legs, my arm, my back. I was quite overweight as well. I didn't quite figure my nutrition out at this point and was still eating at the same level that I was eating at before, but in a wheelchair. So it wasn't great. They wouldn't let me take a wheelchair out, and they wouldn't let me take a carer with me. So I had to fly on my own with no wheelchair, no one, and just even getting from the UK to America was brutal, and it was terrifying trying to navigate airports on my own on prosthetic legs that I couldn't even walk on, falling down escalators and all sorts of gnarly stuff. Um, but I went out there and got my ass whipped for 3 weeks, and that was the last time I used the wheelchair. 9th of June 2009. They trained me and mentored me and coached me to the point where I didn't need it. And then all of a sudden, 6 months go by, a year goes by. What is it now? 17 years, I think, maybe since I last used one. But I got told in hospital that I'd never be without one. And now I never needed one because of the help and support they gave me. So, being that thinking man soldier that we're told we are, I took that risk, if you like, went out and did it, came back, and lots of people benefited from that. Lots of people, because actually a couple of months later, they came to the UK to the rehabilitation centre, talked to some of the prosthetists, the doctors, the nurses, the physiotherapists, and the patients, and spent a couple of days training them, and then everyone just improved. They learned new things, tried new things. We were very much, despite being roughy, tufty soldiers, we were very much wrapped in cotton wool in rehab, and you couldn't even go outside in case the wind blew you over. Whereas in America, they had me within 15 minutes of landing. I was driving a car on the wrong side of the road at night with prosthetics. I was shopping in the mall, falling down the escalators. It was just insane. But it was what I call short-term pain for long-term gain.
Yes. Yep.
Like I said, 17 plus years later, I don't use a wheelchair, I don't own one. Got rid of them in 2009 because of the help and support they gave me.
So we can't compact 17 years in like 20 minutes, but let's talk about that. You start getting better, you start moving, you start being able to be yourself as much as you can. And then it seems like you write a book, you do mentorship, you have a nonprofit, you're involved in jiu-jitsu. How did all these things come about? Was it like, you thought to yourself, Mark, I want to do these things? Or did people start seeing your story and saying, you know what, there's something in that guy that I want to bond with, resonate with, and see how it can improve my life?
Yeah, it's a little bit of both.
Okay.
This bizarrely opened a lot of doors for me and presented a lot of opportunities, especially because I was the first triple amputee. So the media were all over it in the beginning. And the book came about, the first one, as a result of a flippant comment I made to a reporter that I worked with, who ended up ghostwriting it for me, just with an off-the-cuff comment, and that happened. And then I got to a point after I came back from America, and I knew what was possible with the right prosthetics, the right support, and the right kind of approach. I wanted that physicality back in my life of being a Royal Marine, so I started running, swimming, trying to see what I could do. And I'd also been supported heavily, as had my family, by the military charities. So I started combining physical endurance events with fundraising. And that was like I still do it now. I just pulled a 2-ton truck on Saturday and broke a world record. but I still do it now. And all of this stuff just opened up doors and presented opportunities, and I just took them all because I didn't want to sit at home on a disability check. I was 24 years old when I got injured. I'm 41 now. I wanted to live, and I had more children, and I had multiple careers. The whole mentorship thing, it's all been completely unofficial until about 3 weeks ago. Just helping and supporting people whenever I had the time. And then on the 6th of January, myself, some more Royal Marine Commandos and some Army Commandos formed a mentorship company in collaboration with, I don't know if you've heard of Echelon Front with Jocko Willink.
Yeah, Echelon
Front.
Front.
Before I came on here, I was actually going through some of my training. So we're partnered with Jocko and Echelon Front, and we teach their principles, their combat principles, but in our good old British way, in the way that we do it. And it just opened up doors, and you have to be willing to walk through those doors, and then just see what you like and what you don't, carry on with what you do and get rid of what you don't. And you can help a lot of people along the way in many ways, by raising money, by them seeing what you're doing, by you mentoring them one-on-one or in group situations. So it's just phenomenally fulfilling, something that I thought back in the day when I was in a hospital bed at 24 was the worst thing that could ever happen to me, probably ended up being one of the best. And I put that down to incredible people that were willing to reach out and support me, even though they didn't have to.
You had to believe in yourself first. And I think that's something that a lot of people miss. And I think you're right. It's easy to sit in your wheelchair for me to sit there and say, well, I can't do this anymore. And it's hard. And I know this because I've done this myself, Mark, to push through. And I really believe, I told somebody, look, I had a choice. I could either pay now and take the pain now, or pay later and actually have it be worse, because it's just going to get worse and worse the longer I'm just not doing anything.
Yeah.
And it really is something where you can take a catastrophic event, your own trials and tribulations, and use them for something positive. And I think that, it has to be, of course, the Marines that kind of show the way for that. I'm just saying. You've done all this stuff. Yeah. What's next for you? I mean, first of all, you don't look like you're 41, by the way. I mean, no, you look great. But what's next for Mark in the next?
But it's a very easy life so far.
Well, I don't know if we should recommend it to everybody, but okay. Oh. What's next for you?
So actually, when I turned 40, so my life kind of works in like 10-year chunks. So I joined the military. 10 years later, I'm discharged. The next 10 years were all to do with, excuse me, fundraising, endurance events. And then when I turned 40 last year, I decided that the next decade of my life was going to be dedicated to business, because it's not something I have any knowledge in, really. It's not something I have any experience in, and it's a challenge. And it's very different over here, I think. We don't really talk about money in the UK. It's like a taboo thing. And it's taken me a long time to get here to be able to say this. But, excuse my language, my aim is to make a shit ton of money. And I mean a shit ton. And not for the reasons that you would think, though. It's not to be fancy and like my outfit now, the whole outfit cost about £3.50. I don't wear fancy clothes or anything. It's the challenge, because what I want to do is come on a podcast, at some point in the future and say, I've got 4 fingers, 1 thumb and a smartphone, and I managed to figure this out, so anyone can. And that'll be
you like a challenge. You like a challenge.
I know. This is why I got involved in the mentoring company. I do the speaking. I've got a merchandise company. I've monetized my social media. I've got like 7 businesses right now. And it's hard for me not to open new ones, because I had an opportunity last week to start a social media management company, but I can't do that. I've got to focus on what I'm doing. And the really exciting thing for me is I want to bring a load of people along with me. And I'll be quite honest about this. In the past, even in my situation, when you wouldn't think it, I've had people rip me off, steal money from me, and these are military people as well.
Yep.
And that's not my mindset. It never has been. You know, everything I've done since I was a kid, I've wanted to do as a team with other people and enjoy their success and celebrate together and spread that to our families, you know, and all these things. And those people that have burned me have kind of lit that fire to, you know, go on that mission, and, you know, even more now. Because I know this is the funny thing, the day we live in, you know, the day and age we live in, people are always watching, like on social media stuff.
Yes.
And I've never really like talked about, maybe I will in the future, you know, I've got my own podcast too, and maybe without mentioning names, I'll use those situations I talked about as lessons. But I've always just kind of took it and then moved on, even though I know they're watching, and carried on building and building and building and building. And I just have a vision of me. It's almost like, you know, in the Fast and Furious movies where they sit in the back having a barbecue. It's going to be like that. And we're all going to be like family, and we're going to win together and all be celebrating, and kids running around all excited, and, you know, just as a unit.
Man, that's hard. I mean, Mark, one of the things I've learned doing this and doing other things is you got to have a good, tight crew.
Yes.
And sometimes it's a small group of people, men and women who, like, you know, they believe in you and they're your ride and die.
Yep.
And it's hard because you get burned a couple times. It's like, well, I don't want to work with anybody. But the truth is, you go further together.
Yep.
You go further with a crew. Well, I mean, it's 2025 right now, so hopefully it won't be 10 years before we talk again. But I'm definitely interested in watching your journey. You like to chase, don't you? It's chasing that. It's chasing the goal. It's chasing the target. I get it. And it's a high. It's like, you know, let's do this.
Mm.
And you complete the mission, and it's like, well, what's next?
And that is it. And sometimes in the past, that's not always been a great thing, because I'll just finish one thing and go, what's next? And not enjoy the thing that I've just done. So as I've got older, I've kind of learned to every once in a while take my foot off the gas, enjoy the moment, and then press on.
It's hard though. I get it. I've really enjoyed getting to talk with you. I appreciate your candor, and I appreciate your, you know, you remind me of some of my British colleagues who are very, like, you know, even keeled. Oh, I just ran 20 miles a day. It's no big deal, mate.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. But, you know, I love it. And, you know, my last name is Partington, so I've learned about my British roots from the Manchester area.
Okay.
And then the fact that, you know, believe it or not, a lot of us, you know, U.S. Marines still think of you all as our older brothers/cousins. You know, you were the first Marines. A lot of our traditions come from the Royal Marines. So, you know, I mean this with every bit of respect when I say Semper Fidelis, brother.
Oh, thank you, man. Thank you.
So, last thing before I get all mushy here, how do people get in contact or see what Mark is up to, what you're doing, and how to get a hold of your books? I'll have the links to your books in the Oscar Mike Radio show post, but how do people contact Mark?
So I'm on social media every day.
Everywhere, every day? Okay.
Pretty much every platform, and my handle is just at Mark Ormrod. And I was lucky because I've managed to get that on every platform, the same handle.
What?
Yeah, I know. No underscores, no dashes, nothing. Just at Mark Ormrod on every platform, and you can find me on there every day.
All right.
Cool.
Well, folks, this has been very, very cool. Let's see what the next 10 years holds for Mark. Let's learn from this lesson of resilience and, you know, that you know, stiff British upper lip that I learned about growing up. Mark, thank you very much. As we say in Oscar Mike Radio, we're mission in flight.
The biggest fear Gold Star families have, that their child will be forgotten.
We need to never forget freedom wasn't free.
It's the fact that they give us the life we have now. We should remember them and give thanks to them.
If I can be a part of something today that's going to make the surviving family of any of these veterans, these heroes, feel better tomorrow, then it's worth it.
That one wreath symbolizes one family that was able to smile because of the generous donations.
To sponsor a wreath and honor a veteran, visit wreathsacrossamerica.org.
Thank you for listening and watching Oscar Mike Radio, where our active duty service members and veterans are in action and the mission is in flight. Oscar Mike Radio is an oversized load Co-Sinister One production. If you are a veteran or know a veteran who needs help, please dial 988 and press 1 for the Veterans Crisis